other videos that I've added into our folder on Blackboard. There's a number of those videos that are going to explain lip syncing much more, and I'd highly suggest that you check those out. But I wanted to make sure that you felt comfortable using Blender as we haven't used it before. I have a pre-made, pre-rigged model that I've downloaded online. The link will be in our description on Blackboard as well. But going forward here, I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about how to actually make your lip sync sequence. So first things first, you can use any audio that you want. This is just an experiment for school purposes. So that's pretty much going to let us get away with some copyright issues. Going forward, however, you do want to be aware of copyright law and make sure that you're not stealing anyone else's property. But for the sake of argument, I'm going to go ahead and use one of my favorite quotes from The Pursuit of Happiness. And in this movie, starring Will Smith, he's playing basketball with his son. Basically tells him that he's not going to be a basketball star. And there's a kind of a nice poignant moment in the film where they meet up together right about here. And he tells him that, that he should follow his dreams. He should do what his heart tells him is right and not listen to anyone, not even his father. So it's a nice, quick, simple line of dialogue. It's about give or take about a minute long when everything's said and done. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to download the audio from YouTube. There are websites out there that'll let you do that. However, I'm not going to explicitly show you because some of those websites are not necessarily legal. So I'm just going to go ahead and magically, yep, there we go. Hey, I've already gone ahead and must have magically downloaded this on my own. I don't know how it showed up in my documents, but I now have the audio for that whole clip. But you'll notice that it's the entire clip. It's a whole, 2-3 minute long clip right there. So I need to edit that down. I am on a Mac, so I'm just going to go ahead and right click, open, and I'm going to open it in the QuickTime Player. Here's my little audio dialogue there. Now I only want that 1 minute little tiny clip, or that couple second clip. That's all I need. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to trim it. I'm going to trim by clicking Edit, come down to the word Trim. I could also do Command T, that would work just as well. And now it lets me into the actual audio file. This is a lot easier. There are other ways to do this, of course. You could be using Audacity, GarageBand, even iMovie, and it would let you clip and crop, but this will do it just for me here. So let's see, I'm just going to click in here and take a listen.
Somebody tells you you can't do something. Not even me.
So I really want just this little section right here. So I'm just gonna trim it up and trim it up. For yours, again, I want you to have a good sense, a good line of dialogue, but I'm not going to require it that it is a certain length because again, this is just an experiment into 3D animation. So I've got my audio clip right here. What I want to do is save it. However, if I do File, hit Trim, there we go. If I do File and Save, it's actually going to want to save it as a movie file, not an audio file, because it's QuickTime and it doesn't know any better. So instead I'm going to hit Export Audio Only. This way, it's going to let me save it as an actual audio file. So we'll just call this our lip sync audio. Nice and easy. You can name it whatever the heck you want, it really doesn't matter. And magically it appears in my little menu there. I don't need that anymore. And here's my new clip, nice and short. So it's 10 seconds long. That's perfect for our purposes. Okay, now, again, I have an entire video dedicated just to importing sound into your movie. But again, I want to make sure that you feel comfortable here. So let's walk through. So I opened up Blender. In Blender, I don't hit this top bar here. Instead, I hit File on the inside of the actual application there. And I just did File, Open, and I found this document, the pre-made file that we've got here. Also, there's an entire video talking about your mouse. Whenever it comes to a Macintosh, if you're going to work in the studio here, you want to make sure that you set up your mouse with a primary button, a secondary button, and button 3. And button 3 is pretty important because without that, you're not able to rotate in 3 dimensions. And of course, because we're working in 3D, you want to be able to see this guy from 360 degrees. I grabbed this model, again, I just downloaded it off the internet, but I grabbed it because it has a good wide variety of abilities built in. They are pre-rigged, ready to go. So all these little arrows and these rings and things, all of that won't actually be there whenever you're rendering. Along the way, if you ever want to test to see how your picture looks, you can always look down at your keyboard and you can do F12. You will have to click the function key, that's the little FN up by the delete key. So I'll hit FN and F12, and that shows me a quick little rendering of kind of where the camera is at and what we're really looking at. So I'm going to hit back to previous. Again, I've got my 3D view, I've got my front view, and my side view here, so that lets me kind of see this guy in 360 degrees, looking pretty good. Now I need to import my audio, so automatically I've got this view lined up right here. This is our timeline, that's where our animation is going to go. Down here we've got how we're going to actually eventually save and render. Render just means saving out your actual file. And exporting it as a, not as a JPEG, but as a video file. We'll do QuickTime, that'll work fine for our purposes. But I'm gonna click on this little button right here, and I'm gonna switch over from my current viewpoint, and I wanna switch over to Video Sequence Editor. Now again, there's an entire video dedicated to this already, so I would suggest that you watch that. But I'm gonna go ahead and I want to add, I want to add in some audio, a little sound. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my sound, just like so, and it gets plunked in there. I can always move it around as well, but we're going to leave it just like so. And that looks pretty good. So then I need to come up here to playback, and I want to make sure that I turn on audio scrubbing. That way, as I scrub across my animation, I don't know if you can hear that, I actually can hear the dialogue that's underneath there. That really helps out. So whenever it comes to 3D animation, you want to think about it more like sculpture, if you want to think about it that way. You want to hit those key poses individually and slowly work your way into the actual mouth. Now again, I've already added in a number of 2D lip sync tutorials on our YouTube links there. So I definitely suggest that you check those out, because you're not putting a mouth movement for every individual word or syllable. It's going to look like a jumbled mess if you do that. You really only want to hit on certain key sounds, namely vowels. But of course there are some words that you want to add some emphasis to, and so maybe you want to open the mouth a little bit wider, or maybe have his neck kind of pop out a little bit, or have his eyes shift around or something like that. So first I'm just going to aim at the actual head itself, and to do that I've got a number of different rings here. So this ring with the little arrows on top of it, I'm selecting by clicking my right click there, my second mouse. That one there is the entire head itself. So really, we don't want to be playing around with this one all that much. We're just going to leave that one alone. Instead, I've got this kind of halo ring up here, and that is going to allow me to adjust his head, turn him side to side, and turn his head kind of back and forth there. And you can notice that this ring pops up. I'm clicking on the green, the red, and the blue, and that lets me adjust the X, Y, and Z axes that are on this fella here. So that looks pretty good. Then this other ring right around his neck, that's going to let me adjust, no surprise, his actual neck here. So I can kind of pull up his neck, maybe he's making a bold statement. I can tilt his neck, that looks more like a salamander, I don't know about that one. And I can kind of rotate as well. So a number of different positions that I can kind of put him in, give him a little throat jiggle, that would work too. So I want to start off by kind of placing him in a certain position. And as I scrub along, maybe there's a particular word that I'd really like to punch on. So I want to make sure that I start adding in different poses into this. For that, again, I've set aside an entirely different video for you to follow along with, that we can talk about how to add in particular poses and different keyframes, what are called keyframes. So with that being said, I would suggest that you watch through some of the videos on how to make your poses, on how to animate in Blender, as well as how to make lip syncs. I'll come out if you need it and help you in class a little bit more. This can be a little bit confusing at first, but once you get the hang of it, I think it's pretty simplistic, almost easier than working 2D. Remember that all of these little tiny rings here do something to the face. So you can shift the eyes around, make him roll his eyes. I can grab his individual little brow right there, make him a little sad, or maybe I make him grab the other one here and make him a little bit angrier too. That would work. right? Or give him some angry eyes. So this giant plus, in case you're wondering, that is the actual opening of his mouth. But what sound is coming out of the mouth really depends on his facial movements. So again, you want to look around. I've got these little tiny dots right here. These dots are going to control his tongue, right? I can also, oops, there we go. I can also adjust that tongue, twist it around inside his mouth. That would make a different sound, of course. There's this long bar right here that controls his upper teeth, assuming you don't want his dentures to fall out there, but maybe he needs to snarl for some reason, so you can lower that down as well. And then these little arrows off on the side adjust how open, how closed, or how up and down his mouth go. So again, using basically those 4 or 5 different components, you can start to place the mouth movements. But again, I want to suggest to you that as you're going along, start with the overall head first. Move that around, have that punch on particular words. Then go back again, scrub back in your keyframe, and as you're going along, you can adjust the actual movement. So I can just go ahead and start to set my first kind of keyframe here. Maybe I punch on that head a little bit, right there, oops. Right, let's see, maybe, oh, yeah, right there looks good. Let's move his eyeballs around so we can actually see what we're looking at. Now remember that even though I'm rotating around by clicking on this center button, my scroll wheel there, remember that that's not what the camera sees. So I'm going to hit Fn and F12 again, and this is what the camera is actually seeing. We can also adjust the camera as well as the lighting. If you scroll all the way back there, you can see there's a little tiny flicker right there. This is actually my light source as well, so I can adjust a lot of things. If I want to give more of a scary vibe, I can put that light underneath of his face and really move a lot around. So the best thing you can do right now is just play around. Follow with those other tutorials that I have and get involved in keyframing, setting these keyframes kind of one at a time. Do not work from the start and keep chugging along. Instead, work by jumping through the whole timeline with just his cranium, then working through the whole timeline with maybe just his eyes and where he's looking and his eyebrows, then go back again. And this is really how animation in 3D works, is by back and forth, back and forth. You do not want to just go frame 1, frame 2, frame 3, frame 4. It's going to look very, very jumbled. So try to go back and forth throughout your entire timeline, and then, like I said, follow along with some other videos, and I can always help you in class as well. All right? That being said, good luck, and I'll see you in class.